Hydo, and welcome to the end of Commander 2021. I've gone through all of the different new legendary creatures, given my recommendations, and this is my top 5. It's been quite a cool set, Overall, I think that the red-white sort of decks have been the most impactful, but that doesn't mean that they're my personal favourites. So, without further ado, let's subscribe to my channel. Please do. It'll make me very, very happy if you'd subscribe. And we'll get on to the top 5. Weighing in at number 5, we've got Loshiel, Clockwork Scholar. 3 mana, 2/4. Elephant Artificer. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. And whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. This is a really, really cool commander, It gives white some card draw. Yes, the fact that it's only once per turn is a bit of a negative, but it means that you have to sort of think outside of the box and, figure out how best to use this ability. My favourite way, Genesis Chamber, with a couple of creatures with flash. Genesis Chamber, 2 mana for an artifact. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, if it is untapped, that creature's controller creates a 1/1 colourless mirror artifact creature token. So with something like that lion, what's it called? White Mane Lion. That creature bounces another creature or itself back to your hand. So for 2 mana and Genesis Chamber, every single turn, you can make a token, draw a card with your commander. Eldrazi Displacer, 3 mana for an Eldrazi 3/3 with Devoid, so it's actually colourless. Pay 3 mana, one of it has to be a colourless mana. Exile another target creature, then return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So another great way that we can trigger and enter the battlefield. If we've got any artifact creatures that make tokens, this can exploit that by having another enter the battlefield. Then Shimmermere, 3 mana for a 2/2 with flash. You may cast artifact spells as though they had flash. We're going to be playing a lot of artifact creatures, so why not flash them in and draw a couple of cards on our opponent's turns. To go along with that, Vidalcan Orrery, 4 mana artifact. You may cast online cards as though they had flash. Again, excellent use of the flash ability. We can draw cards off it. Then, because we have so many different artifacts, all of our artifacts ramp. Clock of Omens works fantastically with it. 4 mana for an artifact. Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control. Untap target artifact. Absolutely brilliant. Can really accelerate you ahead. And we're going to be playing so many artifact creatures that we can really make use of this with all the tokens we got flying around. And I talked about White Mane Lion. Stonecloaker is its bigger brother. 3 mana for a 3/2 with flash and flying. When it enters the battlefield, return a creature you control to its owner's hand, so it can return itself, which is the main sort of use for it. And when it enters the battlefield, exile target card from a graveyard. Excellent bit of reanimation hate. If someone targets a creature with a reanimation spell, exile it and they lose out. And, you've got a nice bit of value out of it. Which brings me on to my 4th pick. And in at number 4, I've picked Felicia, Fang of Silverquill. I hate the majority of the black-white cards from Silverquill, in the main set of Strixhaven and in this commander set. But Felicia is a really cool build around. It's not political. It's got an identity, and there's some really cool cards that you can use for it. 4 mana for a 3/2 with Flying and Mentor. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, if it had counts on it, create a X tapped 2/1 white and black Inkling creature tokens with flying, where X is the number of counters it had on it. So, one of my favourite cards for this, Amit Eternal, 3 mana for an Afflictee. Whenever an opponent attacks, but it's a 5/5 that whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a 1/1 counter on it. This is great. It's a card that you wouldn't really use anywhere. It just builds up counters, and then when it dies, we draw 5 cards because it has 5 counters on it. No, we get 5 2/1s. Black Sun Zenith is another version of this. Double black and X for a sorcery. Put X -1/-1 counters on each creature. Shuffle it into its owner's library. So we kill a bunch of dudes. All of our creatures are going to die, but because they've got maybe 10 -1/-1 counters, for each creature that dies, we get 10 2/1 tokens. Incredibly, incredibly powerful. Then Tetsamok Primal Death, 6 mana for a 6/6 with Death Touch. Pay a rack.
Pay a black, reveal it from your hand. Put a prey counter on target creature. Activate this ability only during your turn. When it enters the battlefield, destroy each creature an opponent controls with a prey counter on it. So we can put it onto our opponent's creatures, and use this as a board wipe. But if we have a load of black mana left over, we can just keep targeting our own things to pile counters on it. And then when we sacrifice it, we're going to get a ton of little dudes. Another couple of cards that work really well with this. Myriad Construct, 4 mana for a 4/4 with kicker of 3. When it is kicked, it enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it for each non-basic land your opponents control. And then when it becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it and create a number of 1/1 artifacts equal to its power. So it dumps upon a ton of counters onto itself, and then even if our commander isn't on the field and someone targets it, we're going to get a load of tokens anyway. Really, really powerful. Alenda the Dusk Rose, 4 mana for a 1/1 with lifelink. Whenever another creature dies, and we're going to be sacrificing a lot of creatures in this deck, put a 1/1 counter on it, and when it dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Alenda's power. Both of these work exceptionally well because not only do we get the tokens that they create, but if our commander's on the field, we also get her tokens as well from the dying. Finally, Custody Soulbinders, 4 mana for a 0/0. Enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it, where X is the number of other creatures on the battlefield. And you can pay 3, remove a 1/1 counter from it, and make a 1/1. Does everything the deck wants to do, makes tokens, has a bunch of counters on it. It's really, really quite powerful. Moving on to number 3. Oskia the Reconstructor. 4 mana for a 4/4. He's a giant artificer, and he's got vigilance, and you can pay 1, sacrifice an artifact, target creature you control gets +2 per so till end of turn. But the reason this is so cool and so interesting, all that is just, standard Boros stuff, attacking, buffing, power, that sort of stuff. Pay X and tap it, exile an artifact card with mana value of X from your graveyard. Create 2 tokens that are copied of the exiled cards. Activate only as a sorcery. The only as a sorcery thing really sucks, but so many cool different things you can do with this. Lotus Bloom is a 0 mana artifact with suspend of 3 for 0. And when it comes off suspend, sacrifice Lotus Bloom, add 3 mana of any one colour. So if this finds its way into our graveyard, we can pay 0 and tap our commander to get 2 Lotus Blooms, putting us ahead by 6 mana, which is absolutely astonishing. One of my favourite things to do in this sort of deck is eggs. Chromatic Star is a 1 mana artifact, and you can pay 1, tap it, and sacrifice it to make a mana. Or, when it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So, using our commander's 1 ability, we can sacrifice artifacts, and using this, we're going to draw cards. Then we can tap him and make a bunch of these that we can sack again and draw more cards. The eggs just keep on flowing everywhere. Conjurer's Bauble, another great little egg. And nice bit of artwork. I really like the sort of orb that's going on there. 1 mana for an artifact and tap, sacrifice it. Put up to 1 target card from a graveyard on the bottom of your library. Draw a card. So again, we can't sacrifice it to our commander, but it sacrifices itself to gain us a ton of cards in hand. And Ichor Wellspring, one of the best cards in this deck. 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield, it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. Draw a card. So on every axis, we're going to be drawing cards, and for just 2 mana, we get 2 copies of this, draw 2 more cards, then we sacrifice them, draw 2 more cards. We can just churn through the deck with this. Salvaging Station is a 6 mana artifact. Return target non-creature artifact with converted mana cost 1 or less from your graveyard to play. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard to play, you may untap Salvaging Station. So this can just constantly rebuy our little eggs, and then we can keep drawing cards. If our commander's out of commission, this is a nice little tool that we can use. Then, Goblin Engineer. 2 mana for a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card, put it into your graveyard. Exactly what our commander wants. We can tutor up absolutely anything we want, and then bring it back with our commander. But you can pay a red and tap it, sacrifice an artifact. Return target artifact with convert mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exactly what our commander's doing, and this is just a lovely bit of value. And look at that little goblin there with his little wrench. This looks so cool. Which brings me on to my number 2 pick. I'm a Golgari boy deep down in my soul, and eating food is one of the reasons I've put on quite a bit of weight in the last couple of months. So let's combine those two with Giome Master Chef. 4 mana for a 5/3 with Trample. At the beginning of your end step, create a number of food tokens equal to the number of non-token creatures you had enter the battlefield under your control this turn. You can pay 1 and sacrifice food. Target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. So, straight out the gate, Cauldron Familiar is a classic in this deck. A single black for a cat, so that's a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Sacrifice food, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. So with any sort of sack outlet, we can just sack the cat, bring it back, sack, and then at the end of turn, because the cat has entered so many times, we're going to get all of those food back again. This works exceptionally well with Last Laugh. 4 mana for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent other than Last Laugh is put into a graveyard from play, it deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. When no creature in play, sacrifice Last Laugh. Why is this so good? Well, our commander's other ability, the ability to sack food to make something indestructible, means that we should always have a creature on the field, as you know, our creatures will be indestructible. And even though Last Laugh will deal damage to them, they won't die. So we can keep our board by sacrificing all these food, but we're going to wipe out our opponent's board and just decimate their entire field. Really, really cool. And food are artifact tokens. I've often tried to eat artifacts, and it really hurt me, but in the world of Magic, completely different. So, Inspiring Statuary, which is a 3 mana artifact, says non-artifact spells you cast have Improvise, which means your artifacts can help you cast a spell. So for each colorless generic mana, you can tap a artifact to pay for that. So we can tap all of our food to help us cast Eldrazi and other such massive things. Heroic Death's Wail is a really cool include in this deck. 4 mana for a 4/4 with flying. And the artwork on this is just astounding. It just looks so vibrant. Those purples and pinks just look excellent. And there's a big skull with horns sort of thing. Great. Whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, destroy that creature. So using Giome's second ability to sacrifice food and target something to give it indestructible, we can use that on our opponents to kill their creatures, which, you know, excellent bit of synergy there. God Eternal Bond 2 is a 5 mana 5/6 with Menace. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of other permanents, then draw that many cards. When it dies, put it into exile, or exile, you may put it into its owner's library third from the top. So we can sacrifice all of our foods, couple of lands, to just get tons of cards, tons of fuel for the engine, tons of food to put into our mouths. And it just works so, so well. Then we talked about Clock of Omens before. Clock of Omens in this deck is even better, as for 4 mana you can tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, untap target artifact. So all of our artifact ramp, we can untap it using our food tokens. Incredibly, incredibly powerful. Which brings me on to my number 1 pick. And when I first saw it, I thought, well, it's a bit dull. But when you look into it, there's just so many things you can do with it. It's so powerful. Mono green combo. It's Yodora, Grave Gardener. 5 mana for a 5/5. You need to just stop there. That's good enough. I'd play it in limited. But it's a tree folk druid. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may return it to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. It's a forest land. So, straight off the bat, any sort of sacrifice abilities, you know, things that sort of kill themselves, we're going to get a bit of ramp through Yodora with that ability. But the fact that they return as face down sort of permanents is what makes this so exciting. So, Proteus Machine is a 3 mana 2/2 with Morph. Morph means you play it as a face down 2/2, and you can turn it up at any time for its Morph cost. So, if Proteus Machine dies, it turns face down, and then you can pay 0 to turn it back up. But in between that, because he's a forest land, you can tap him for mana, then turn him face up for 0 mana, sacrifice him to whatever you want. He comes back in face down, untapped, you tap him again for a green, and so on and so forth. So you can make infinite mana, you've got infinite sacrifices. It's just fantastic and so, so cool. It's just one of those interactions, and what makes Commander so interesting to me
is the ways that you can find to break this sort of thing. Heart Warden, as I was talking about sacrificing things, 2 mana for an elf 1/1. You can tap it for a green mana to add to your mana pool. That's fine by itself. You know, a 2 mana dork, really, really good. But you can pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card. So, with Yodora on the field, you pay 2, sacrifice it, and you've tapped it for mana to pay one of those. It dies, you draw a card, and you get a forest 4. It's just so cool. It's like, those interactions are so good. But there's more. Quirion Ranger is a 1 green 1/1 elf. Return a forest you control to its owner's hand. Untap target creature. Use this ability only once each turn. So, every time something dies, it becomes a forest, which means that Quirion Ranger can return those, you know, face down forests back to your hand, and then you can use them again. You can cast them, do whatever you want with them. This is such cool synergy. You can put, you know, a bunch of elves that tap for mana. Heart Warden, you know, taps for mana, untap it, generate another mana. It's just so good. It's these synergies, I love them. Zoltani, Yavamaya's avatar, absolutely massive dude. 6 mana 0/0. All right, doesn't sound that massive straight off the bat, but he's got reach and trample, and he gets 1/1 for each land you control and each land card in your graveyard. So obviously, with all these creatures dying, they're going to be making forests. We're going to have a lot of lands, but pay 2, return 2 lands you control from its owner's hand. Return Multani from your graveyard to your hand. So if he dies, you can use him to rebuy some of your forest lands that are other creatures or whatever. It's just such cool synergy, and it just works so well. Then we got Tireless Tracker, 3 mana for a 3/2. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under control, investigate, which means you put a clue into play that can sacrifice to draw a card. Nice bit of card advantage in mono green. And whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a 1/1 counter on Tireless Tracker. So this is just really good value. Whenever a creature dies, a land's entering the battlefield, we get a clue token. It's just brilliant. Then Altar of Deventure, 2 mana for an artifact, sacrifice a creature. Target player puts a number of cards equal to that sacrifice creature's power from the top of their library into their graveyard. So with Proteus Machine, this mills our opponents out and will kill them all just for using some dumb morph creature that was absolutely useless before this card was printed. So good. It's just so cool. I just love it. It's everything you want out of Commander. You know, it's doing dumb stuff. It's using cards in unique ways. And that is my top 5 commanders from this set. It's been really quite cool. We've seen some good stuff, I think. And the cards that push into new directions are always the ones that I love. That they really stand out, and you know, when you discover what they can do, it just makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I just enjoy it. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe. I'd really like that, and you know, make my heart start beating again, because I'm a corpse. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.